Are they incomplete?
So there's 7. No, there's a 7-book set that we just bought. Jeez. They're not all related to the same story, but they are in that same world. So it's kind of like 3 of them, I think, are like the Narnia movies that tie in together, but the other 2 or the other few are just in that world.
You're actually making it more unlikely right now that I'll get into them. So, I'm just trying to buy time here while I find the theme song. Welcome, everybody, to the Full Scoop Podcast. I am your host, Alan Brown. This is a comedy show where we dive into stories, headlines, and other interesting topics. Today, we're talking about heel turns. Are all of those heroes we look up to destined to fall from grace? Because it certainly seems that way. Here to help me cook up the show are my co-hosts.
I am Jesse.
And I am Winston Smith. You know, before we get into that, because that's actually a very serious situation, you know, people that you kind of looked up to and, you know, you feel like, oh, what a fall from grace. But I feel like nowadays, something that really ruins a serious situation is texting, specifically the sound effects. Because earlier in the week, we had a coworker who was out sick, you know, and it was kind of a serious thing.
Yeah.
And it just sucks. And so like my boss is like texting back and forth with the coworker to kind of find out what's going on with them. But I feel all the seriousness of the situation is sucked out because my boss has the sound effects turned on their texting. So you just hear like, boop, 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 boop. You know, I'm sitting, I'm laughing. I'm like, I know this is terrible what's going on, but there's nothing serious about this. I feel like this belongs in like a Naked Gun movie or something. Like, oh my God, Nordberg's been shot. Tick, 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 whoop, whoop. My God, he's dead. Whoop, whoop. It's just, that's not how you want to receive bad news.
It's a good thing Apple didn't choose the cuckoo sound as a default. Oh no,
I didn't know we could do that. That's good to know.
Oh man, yeah,
all of my texts are about to get silly.
If you don't no, the new thing right now is to just have your phone on silent. It's
God
blasphemous forbid. If it ever is not on silent.
God forbid it rings anywhere.
Yeah.
Like,
even at a concert, I would be so embarrassed.
It's never good news.
I mean, especially at a concert.
I know.
You could be seen as the villain, which is what we're talking about today.
Interesting.
I mean, I'll set the context. This is how this came up. Right now, and I probably butcher it, but you guys add on as you understand the situation. Mm-hmm. So we are recording this in June 2025.
Early June.
So this could change. I only see this getting worse. But we're talking about Elon Musk and Donald Trump.
The honeymoon is over.
You're talking about their breakup.
They're having a very public breakup.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God. I love when a toxic relationship implodes in front of everybody. This is fantastic on a national scale, worldwide scale, really.
We never saw them kiss, which makes me sad.
Their egos were just not going to let them coexist. And we knew that. I think sensible people knew that.
We're not surprised it happened.
Oh, yeah.
We're surprised it happened so quickly. Because, I mean, if you look at Trump's previous administration, his previous presidential run that he had back from 2016 to 2020, it was just full of people leaving him or him firing people. Like, you couldn't get used to.
They were dropping like flies.
They were dropping like flies. You could not get used to. Just as soon as you learn one guy's name, here comes someone else to replace them.
Yeah.
Because either Trump kicked them out, or they're like, I can't deal with this guy anymore.
Did you hear about the measurement that people were using for that?
No.
They started timing or measuring the length of someone's tenure in the Trump White House as a Scaramucci. So someone said about Elon Musk and Donald Trump, oh, he lasted 12 Scaramucci's.
Nice.
That's the benchmark that's been used.
Yeah. But this one happening so quick. Like, he didn't even make it to half the year. I was actually giving them a year. I was like, I give them a year before, these two paranoid, sociopathic, psychotic egomaniacs start clashing. I was like, it's a year. They'll get in a good year of getting a bunch of stuff done. We didn't make it that far. We did not. We didn't make it through June.
We didn't make it to June.
We didn't make it to June.
This had happened a few days before it hit the news.
This has been going on for a while. It just finally spilled out into the, every time you see a couple arguing in public,
it's been a minute.
Stuff that's been brewing for a while behind the scenes in private.
No, I'm not going to wait until we get home. You have been picking at this.
Yeah,
That's
so
exactly what happened.
it seems that they're arguing about the big beautiful bill, as Trump is called.
Money. That's always a root of a lot of problems in that relationship is money problems.
And so, as I understand it, Elon Musk's EV incentives were cut from the big beautiful bill, and that seems to be the heart of it. But on the public side, he's saying that this is ruining all the savings that he got through Doge. They're overspending, and it's a bloated bill. And
couple fighting over expenses, right?
Yeah, and then Trump is saying that Elon's just mad because he's not getting what he wants, and then they're threatening each other with what they're going to do. So then Elon Musk is saying, well, I'm not going to do the work for NASA anymore. And I haven't dug deep into what's really going on past that. I just know that the bill is bloated, and there's a lot of stuff that's getting cut that we would think is good. Like there was Medicare and Medicaid cuts, even though Trump keeps saying it's not going to be affected. It's literally in there. But the most egregious thing is that the verbiage was finally slipped in for allowing or for preventing someone, and this is how it was described, preventing, quote, someone from the administration from being prosecuted for flaunting the orders of the Supreme Court. And I'll put not an end quote, but what is it when you do just a single quote instead of the double
quote
quote
within a quote?
No, instead of doing those quotes, I'm doing just that quote, that little apostrophe. It's a little apostrophe. That's how I quote it when I'm like, this is more or less what was said. And so that verbiage is in there. And now even people from the Republican side that voted for the bill are angry. This thing, man, for as much as Trump wants to brand it a big, beautiful bill, it's a big bullshit mess, dude. Mm-hmm. So it's a
morbidly obese bill at this point, and they're fighting about it. Elon, like you said, he's losing his a lot of stuff is going on. So Trump is like saying, one good way to really cut the budget is to eliminate all of Elon's contracts with the government. So he's threatening to like cut off Elon's allowance, right?
Yeah.
And then Elon fires back with like, somebody's name is on that Epstein list.
Yeah.
So now he's threatening to like, it's like when the couple is arguing and they're just like sharing all like their sex secrets in public that you don't want to know about. Like, oh my God, I didn't need to know you like to be spanked with a G.I. Joe or something. That's what's happening right now.
I've never been this excited over a breakup since J-Lo. I've not been this excited to see it go down.
Since when?
Since J-Lo and I forget his name.
Ben Affleck?
Ben Affleck, yes. Yeah. The second or the first time.
But whose side
I'm ready for the third one. That third one's going to be good.
It is going to be good.
I'm on Ben Affleck's side.
Yeah, he looks miserable like every time. But you know what? That's his fault.
That's his fault. He knew what kind of woman J-Lo is. She is all about her career and her brand. And clearly Ben's more comfortable at this age just being behind the camera and keeping a low profile. Yeah. You're with the wrong woman, buddy. She's not going to slow down for you. She's got stuff to do. She's got a residency in Vegas to get ready. She's got movies she's starring in. You knew what you were getting into. He just wanted that butt.
Yeah.
And he forgot what came with it.
Exactly. And I think Donald Trump is definitely the J-Lo. I'm so sure he's the J-Lo. He's got all the stuff he wants to do. Elon just wanted the butt. Like, cause yeah. I just feel like that's the breakup. I'm so excited.
So on that note, yes, you're right, Jess, that this has probably been going on for a lot longer than it's been out in public.
Yeah,
but for me, it's spilled over into my YouTube feed about middle of last week when I started actually noticing it being talked about as a headline. And under one of these videos, someone wrote, "This is kayfabe" in an exclamation mark. So this is kayfabe. Ooh. Well, I don't know the tone that they were using, but that's how they wrote it. And I
could have been excited. This is kayfabe.
This is kayfabe. This is kayfabe. Ooh, so
many ways.
I don't know. I don't know. And part of the reason I don't know is because I'm unfamiliar with the term. I've heard it before around the wrestling world in those terms, but I wanted to bring it to Winston because he's our expert on this, and I wanted to get it from a reliable source. What is kayfabe, and how would that even be a reasonable comment to make on this story?
Very interesting. Kayfabe is the idea of, at this point, we all know, professional wrestling isn't a straight up competitive combat sport the way, the MMA or boxing is. Yes, the winners are, predetermined, who's going to go over, stuff like that. But kayfabe was the idea of no one outside the wrestling world was privy to any of that. Kayfabe was the idea of not releasing the secrets behind pro wrestling, the way, magicians guard their secrets and how they do their tricks. It's like, we know it's not real, but we can't see through how it's being done. And that was sort of the idea behind kayfabe. Like, just, if somebody's a bad guy on screen, they're a bad guy behind the scenes. The baby faces and the heels don't interact in public. If they do, they keep the tension and the rivalry going. You treat it, when you step outside of the ring or outside of the arena, it's still real. It's sort of the quote unquote fake world of professional wrestling spills out into the real world. And that's kayfabe. You keep it alive.
To help with the immersion of this world.
There you go.
Yeah, you keep the immersion. Keep the immersion alive even when the show's over.
Mm-hmm. Plus, I love that.
Yeah, it's very, very few, cool. People who want to get into movies and stuff like that can stay that character outside of the movie. When you meet Robert Downey Jr., you're meeting Robert Downey Jr., not Iron Man, not Tony Stark. But if you meet Stone Cold Steve Austin, you're meeting Stone Cold Steve Austin. You know, like that's him. He stepped out of the TV screen. That's a real person. You know, he's Stone Cold Steve Austin versus a character or whatever. So that was the idea of just keeping that immersion alive, even outside of a show.
That's cool.
And the show continues. Yeah, even past the stage. So somebody's screaming, "This is kayfabe," about the whole Elon and Donald Trump.
They're implying that it's a work. That Elon,
they're putting it on.
Yeah, for us, for some reason, to keep us guessing about what they might actually do, what's actually going on here.
Because we mentioned we saw this coming. And so maybe it is part of the show. This is what the people want. So let's give them that. And separately, I heard someone saying this is probably a distraction from something they're trying to do. And now it makes sense. It ties in that if they're putting it on to distract us from something else, what is that thing that distracting us from? Because this is taking up all the air.
Like by the time that Avengers Age of Ultron came out, everybody was like, oh man, we're going to get a fight between Captain America and Iron Man. And then they delivered that in Civil War.
Yeah.
You know, we all saw it coming, but they still delivered it. Maybe that's what's going on here. Like we all figured there was going to be an implosion. Maybe they just rushed it. I don't know. You know, sometimes that happens. But it's interesting what's going to happen these next couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I want to ask, do you know by any chance where the name of that term comes from, kayfabe? Because it seems nonsensical to me.
Nobody has pinpointed the actual origin. It comes from carny speak. You know, carnies, you know, a lot professional wrestling had its origins in that carny world. You know, there was a time when pro wrestling was legit, you know, and wrestlers would wrestle each other for real and actually have real matches.
Yeah.
But then a lot of these promoters found a way to, well, you know, we can work the people into paying us even more if they think there's something real and something personal. Yeah. And it really started in the carnival world where like a lot of these traveling carnivals would have like a strongman, you know, and they would challenge people from the audience to wrestle the strongman. You put up, you know, $50 or whatever. And if you win the money, you know, and, you know, of course, there's always one audience plant that goes in there and kind of either beats the strong man or comes really close. So I was like, so that other people in the audience are like, if he got close, I can take him.
Yeah.
You know, people line up and start putting their money. And then the strong man, who's probably, they were called a hooker back then because they knew how to hook you. And they could take a limb and just control you that way and just beat you in like 30 seconds flat. And then you've lost. And that's sort of how that kind of came about, that world of professional wrestling of like, there is some legitimacy to it, but there's still like a lot of work into making it successful. And eventually just spilled out into pro wrestling as a whole, where, you know, if we kind of work together to make it seem like a real fight, people are going to pay to see the good guy beat up the bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know? And so it started with that carny speak. And there was even, especially in, you know, when pro wrestling in the 30s and 40s, there was a lot of that carny speak of, you know, I don't really know, you know, the actual, you guys know how like twins will sometimes have their own language that they understand and no one else does?
Freaks. Yeah. Yes.
That's what kayfabe was in pro wrestling, where wrestlers could speak to each other in public, but we don't know what they're saying because we didn't know that language. And so that's where a lot of the words like kayfabe came from. Like some people think it's sort of like a pig Latin version of be fake.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my first impression.
And so that's where it may have come from, but now it's sort of entered public domain, and everybody kind of knows what kayfabe is, and everybody knows wrestling is a work. But it started with carnival language, and carnies.
And I'm gonna pick your brain on this topic a little bit more. let's talk about heel turns. And I know you were saying you could make a huge list on this, but what's the most famous heel turn that comes to mind for you in the wrestling world?
In the wrestling world,
maybe we should explain what a heel turn is too, for anybody that's not familiar with that.
Yeah, in pro wrestling, you got your baby faces and your heels. The baby faces are your good guys. The heels are the bad guys. It's that simple. And a heel turn is when a baby face becomes a heel. They do something dastardly. They double cross somebody, and now they're a bad guy. And there have been many famous heel turns over the years. The biggest one for me growing up was Hulk Hogan turning from Hulk Hogan to Hollywood Hulk Hogan. You know, like he's Hollywood Hogan, now he's a bad guy. Like all throughout the 80s, Hogan was the ultimate good guy.
Yeah.
He stood for American values. He was a real American. He was always, say your prayers, take your vitamins, go to school, say no to drugs. That was the Hulk Hogan mission. And then in 1996, he turns on WCW and he joins up with these outsiders, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, who had come in to try and take over the company. And now Hulk Hogan's the biggest heel in professional wrestling after having been the biggest babyface for almost, 10, 15 years. And it shot like new life into his career, and it made helped make WCW even bigger than the WWF in the mid to late 90s. And so that was the biggest one to me, where I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. And it was a great time. It works. It works best when you do it like that. Someone who's been known to be a good guy for such a long time, suddenly turning bad. Nowadays, it's way too commonplace. I can't think of a single wrestler who hasn't ping-ponged between heel and babyface back and forth several times throughout their career. And it loses its effect, like anything. The more you do it, the less effective it is. So the most recent one is John Cena.
Yeah.
Because John Cena had been babyface since like 2005. So 20 years, like that's even longer than Hogan was a good guy.
Everybody thought he was going to retire that way. He was
going to retire as a babyface. Yeah. And now he's a heel. And I feel it's done something similar where it's kind of brought more attention to the WWE and given Cena new opponents and new ways to put on matches. But it was a big shocker. Like, nobody thought he would ever turn. He was babyface John Cena.
And the reason I bring up heel turns is because Elon famously was allied with the left. He was pro electronic vehicles, pro renewable energy, a developer in technology. He was going to take us into the stars with SpaceX, and sometime in the past 5 years, he really let a whole, I don't know, half of the country, maybe more than half of the country down by flipping into his, what he calls his dark MAGA stage. And so I wanted to look at a few other, or discuss a few other heel turns from a pop culture perspective. So Elon was the first one that I thought. And I can think
I would agree there. I would say, Bill Cosby would be
that's
a good one.
That's right.
Oh my God. Politically, the first one that I think I can remember is George Bush Sr. Part of his whole campaign in, what was it, like 88, I think, what he would be like, read my lips, no new taxes. And then he becomes president, and it's true. He didn't make up any new taxes,
He just
but he hiked
more.
He hiked a lot of the ones we did have.
Okay.
He didn't lie. I didn't lie.
He did. He's like, I never said I wasn't going to raise taxes. I said I wasn't.
All the taxes you're familiar with.
Now they're higher, right? So like that was a big one where like I think that's definitely one thing that kind of cost him the election against Clinton.
Yeah.
Because people felt betrayed. He was like,
rightly so, I think.
You gotta wait until your second turn to.
You got nothing to lose then. Yeah. But that was politically. That's a big one that I can remember actually having lived through.
Mm-hmm. You just is there any
Bill Cosby?
Bill Cosby.
Yeah,
He was
politically-
America's dad, man. Like,
Yeah.
how terrible is that?
Politically, I haven't been awake for that long, so
You weren't even alive for the Bush stuff.
yeah. But my spirit was alive somewhere.
And nowadays, when I think of Bill Cosby, I think of Kevin Spacey in that bucket too.
Another one, yeah.
Just so many amazing performances, and I think this happens with bands too when they come out and support something that's just like really controversial. And we have this inner battle to, well, at least some people do. I don't know. With supporting the art and untying the artist from the art.
Yeah.
And this is probably a topic we've covered before, but I find myself torn. Like the art is tainted, even though like in the example with Kevin Spacey, thousands of other people worked on it.
Yeah.
Right. But his face is on that. It's all over that. Like,
You just want to punch it. You know,
How could you?
How could you? You know, and it makes it. You know, you feel like the guy at the end of American Beauty. Maybe he was the hero all along when he shot Kevin Spacey's character.
Yeah.
I think
I'm also- Go ahead.
another recent one for me is probably the Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds facade that's like going
Yeah.
down
I don't know much about
in
that.
pop culture. Yeah. Like if you're more
Tell
into
us
that.
how that fit.
So essentially, Blake Lively was cast in a movie that was based off of a book, and I forgot his name. Oh my God. Hold on.
The guy that she's fighting with,
Yeah.
Justin Baldoni.
Justin Baldoni.
who I've never heard of before this whole.
He's the guy that did
Situation.
Catfish, the Catfish series. And he's a
Catfish
very,
like on TV.
yeah. He's the one that started it.
Okay.
So Justin Baldoni obtained the rights essentially to a Colleen Hoover book, and it's his movie. He's the producer and he's the director. And it just started spiraling out of control because Blake Lively then started making allegations that he was being inappropriate and he was like she was uncomfortable. He would make her uncomfortable. And she started making all these allegations. But the problem is that Justin Baldoni dropped every single receipt, voice message, like didn't alter anything. Yeah. And then she tried to put in a what do they call it? Like a media blackout. I don't know what it's called, but essentially was saying like, well, you're not supposed to be releasing those. Those are for court. And she tried to push, like, have him not release all of this documentation. And it started being like unraveled and dug through that all of the things she said were lies. And then in that, she was like name dropping all these people to kind of pressure him into doing things her way. So people started digging into her prior interviews and her and all these things started clicking into place that we were just kind of ignoring. And then in that, she brought in Ryan Reynolds and we started seeing all his little conniving little ways, and it started bringing both of them down, and it's been a time.
Yeah,
I thought he was Canadian. How could you?
But it's
way to ruin a perfectly good stereotype.
Yeah, it's been a whole thing. Like, it's watching that train like crash and burn has also been interesting because she was essentially she also betrayed like the feminist movement to some degree, because she was always saying like, I'm a girl's girl and I would stand with women, but she lied about being sexually harassed.
Yeah.
So like there's no coming back from that. Like you lied, and we know you lied because she's talking to him and she's flirting and she's saying she was uncomfortable because she was breastfeeding and he came in. But there's a voice message where she says like, oh, that's fine. Like, I don't really care. Like, there's all these things that she okayed that she's alleging she was uncomfortable with. But a lot of it, like, he just dropped receipts. He's like, I don't care. You can read everything. Text messages, like email exchanges. He talks about his text messages with Ryan Reynolds also.
Yeah.
She name dropped Taylor Swift to be like, well, I have some really like powerful dragons. I am like the Khaleesi. And then she name dropped Taylor Swift and Ryan Reynolds. So Taylor Swift has also been like, no, bitch. Don't involve me in this.
Taylor Swift backed away from her?
Yeah, everyone's been backing away from her because her career is going down. She's dragging Ryan Reynolds with her. And essentially, this is the new Amber Heard, Johnny Depp scenario. Like, it's
Oh my God.
like it's just these two famous people.
The new Mariah.
Poor Justin Baldoni had to watch the release of his movie in a basement by himself because there was like all this debacle.
Right.
Yeah, so he didn't even get to enjoy the premiere of the movie that he created, like in theaters. He saw it by
This is
himself.
supposed to be like his big break.
Yeah, so that's the other.
I asked Mrs. Smith. I said, "Hey, do you feel all like this stuff with Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds? Do you feel it's tainted your enjoyment of Deadpool 3?" And she's like, I feel it has.
Yeah.
I feel it has, because even like the good looking version of Deadpool with like the long hair and the man bun, apparently that was making fun
Of Justin
of Justin Baldoni's man bun hair that he had a man bun, but apparently he was growing it out to like donate it to like the Locks of Love, or that they collect hair for like cancer patients and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh man, you were making fun of the man trying to help cancer patients.
Yeah,
Like,
there's
wow.
like Justin Baldoni has just done so much, and he has such a like a really interesting view of manhood and what it should mean to be a man, and like the vulnerability that should be okay and all this stuff. So he is very much like what you would call like a woke man, and I think he was kind of feeding off of that.
Oh God, you're lucky the Kessel is not here to.
I can
God.
feel
Yeah.
Kelso's
I feel the
tightening.
The
inner rage.
testosterone building in his veins.
Hey, he missed out. He is invited.
He was summoned.
Yeah, he was summoned.
We put out some beers for him.
Now they're just gonna go warm.
Okay, so I'm looking at our itinerary. What do we call it?
Sure.
And I'm seeing Jackie Chan on there, and I'm really scared to ask.
I don't want to know.
I don't want to know.
Don't wanna know.
So that's the thing, right? You got a lot of heroes from growing up, and
Don't let him die.
I keep thinking that how appropriate is that Dark Knight quote, right? You either die a hero, or you live long enough to become a villain. Mm-hmm. And and so with Jackie Chan, it's not so much that he had a heel turn, but I'll put it this way: it's not so much that he had a public or famous heel turn, but those who know a little bit of backstory between him and his family, like once they found that out, it's kind of like that was something that turned him into a heel for them. So my understanding is he's estranged from his daughter or I don't know if it's his son, but he's basically like for 20 years, his son has been like metaphorically dead to him. He doesn't mention him at all. He doesn't support him. So that's something that for every time that I see a Jackie Chan clip, I click on it because I can't help it, because to me, he's still a hero. But every time that I do, in the comments, inevitably someone will mention that. Like he's not as good as you guys think.
Do we know why?
You know what? That's clearly a family issue.
Yeah, I feel like that's different.
Everybody has issues with their families.
Yeah, and I mean, granted, we might not agree, but everyone has family issues. We don't know what happened. Like, I don't know. And I feel like that's different than committing a crime.
Yeah, what some other people do. Or how is that spilling out to like other people? How is that? How is Jackie Chan's problems with his children. And I'm not saying that his son is a bad person or anything, but there are some children out there that, maybe you don't deserve. You're the love of your parents. Like they're not all perfect.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a family issue. Very different from like Kevin Spacey's problems or what Bill Cosby did.
Like yeah. So
well, then I
can forgive Jackie.
Neil
I'm
deGrasse
fine.
Tyson here, which is one of Kelso's heroes. And almost 10 years ago, I think Star Talk, the podcast started coming out. And so we would listen to it together, Kelso and I. And we're big Tyson fans. For me, I don't know. I felt like he started getting a very a big ego. And sometime like in the past 4 or 5 years, 5 years ago, I'll say it that way, he had a accusation of inappropriate touching.
No,
because he's the director of the Hayden Planetarium in New York. And if you are familiar with Neil's mannerisms and the way he interacts with people, it is easy to see how he might be a little too touchy-feely. And
you get too familiar sometimes.
Yeah. And so I think it's neither here or there. I think he was suspended for a brief period of time and then reinstated. So they obviously did an investigation. But I mean, I feel like you'll always have that doubt because, even though he's quote, or not quote, but like I'm doing that air quotes thing of like, he's exonerated.
Yeah.
Powerful men get exonerated all the time. And was he found to be innocent because he really was, or because of his position?
Yeah.
Money and the power. For me, a lot of heel turns have been a lot of the comedians I grew up with, man, in the late 90s, early 2000s. Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle, Jerry Seinfeld. I'm watching all these guys that were at the cutting edge of really being edgy and having something to say, becoming bitter old rich people, And I feel like it happens because they, these comedians, they always had this way of looking at society and trying to find the craziness with it. And when you're young, that feeds you, man. That's what feeds you. That's what gets you creative. That's what gets you noticed. But as you get older and you get money and you get power, then it just sounds like you're whining.
Yeah.
You're whining and complaining that time has passed you by because time has passed you by. You're trying to tell the same type of jokes and humor from 30 years ago, man. 30 years ago. Come on. George Carlin, they say he was always this angry comedian, but he always tried to keep up with the modern time. That's like if George Carlin in the 90s on HBO was still doing his hippy dippy weatherman from the 1960s bit. Like, no, like he changed his game. He changed his style with the times. And it wasn't just about being bitter and old at the people. It was at the people in power and at the institutions in place. That's what his problems were. That's where his grievances were. And here, these comedians, they just complain about young people.
Yeah.
It's old comedians, yelling at clouds at this point, basically.
This is probably going to spawn another episode, but this concept of cancel culture, I feel like maybe there's a misunderstanding or some ambiguations to tease out, because, and this is related to what you're saying about comedians, there's a lot of right-wing comedians that complain.
Jim Brewer. Oh my God, Jim Brewer.
They complain about cancel culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. That's a very big fall. And so it's been argued I'm trying to put my thoughts together here live, but it's been argued that the cancel culture is just them refusing or not able to change with the times, and their jokes just simply, their material just not landing with what's current now. And so it's not so much that there's a that it's being weaponized, but it's more that this is what naturally happens if you don't move on with the time. Society changes. Yeah. And so you have to adapt to it, or otherwise you are left behind and you're out of touch.
Not just and that, you see it honest. Sorry, you have to reevaluate your position in the new society too, because like times change, but where you are within those times also changes. Which is they have money now. Like, it's different. You can't joke about poverty being from your mansion. Like, it sounds condescending.
Yeah, we know you're not struggling.
Ooh,
you're selling out arenas. You got Netflix deals for millions of dollars. You're not speaking to or from like the level you were 20, 30 years ago when you were on your way up. You're at the top now. And it really, I think a lot of it comes down to they can't process criticism anymore because they were told they were geniuses and hilarious for 20 years.
Right.
And all of a sudden to be told like, that's not funny. We don't find that funny anymore. Oh, well, there's something wrong with you.
Right.
Yeah. This generation, younger people, because, 20 years ago, I could say this. And it's the same argument that comedians in like the 50s and 60s were making about not being allowed to do blackface anymore.
Right.
Oh, you guys are too sensitive. In my day, there was nothing wrong with it. It was just blackface comedy, and it's just like, you either, and I've always said you have choices. You can either keep doing what you're doing. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But you're probably going to suffer the consequences, maybe diminishing, ticket sales or whatever. Mm-hmm. Or you can change your act, find other jokes to joke about, or maybe find a way to turn that joke into something that is funny. It's like they don't want to put in that work of like, no, I'm just going to keep telling the joke the exact same way I've been doing it, even though it's not working. Work on the joke. Maybe it's not so much that people... they're like, they're triggered by trans humor or gay jokes or whatever. Maybe they just don't like the way you're doing it.
Yeah.
Because there's still a lot of comedians out there that can tell trans jokes. Eddie Izzard's out there every year doing stand-up comedy. And
these are my clothes. I bought them.
Yeah, and there's ways of being. It's not so much the subject matter. It's just you're just not funny at it.
They also fail to realize that sometimes it's not the particular joke that we're like into. It's your wittiness and delivery. It's your insight. It's all these little nuances that you've picked up that are funny. And we don't even dislike watching them grow and like become millionaires. It just sucks when they're continuing to pander and they're no longer part of the working class or wherever they come from. Yeah. Like, it's the pandering that feels condescending. But like, I've seen comedians that I've watched grow and they change their material. And now it's funny because I'm seeing the ridiculousness from his now level. And that's funny to me. Like, you don't have to continue the act if you're no longer within your community. We don't hate the growth. We just hate the condescension and refusal to accept that now you're in a different level, and that's fine.
Fair enough. One comedian that I want to give props to that has surprised me in the rise of like MAGA culture is Christopher Titus. And this is my own bias, but I just felt like we were going to lose him.
Right. Yeah.
And because that's how I see it now. Like, you're gonna lose some people to the propaganda, and the other side will see it the same way. Like, we're gonna lose other people to the propaganda. But in whatever case, Christopher Titus has only become more of a fervent liberal liberal
Good man.
representative.
He's a good man.
and he seems to have right now less of a reach as Bill Burr. Bill Burr has been plastered everywhere because he's bold enough to not mince words, right? But Christopher Titus is doing the same thing, and he has his own YouTube channel where he's having hour-long conversations and pretty much in the same support and aggressive unfiltered style that we know, but he just has less of a reach, and just someone I wanted to call out there, if whatever.
Which is a total shame, because his sitcom Titus from like the early 2000s, it's one of the funniest sitcoms ever put to film or tape or whatever. I think it's as funny and is as good as anything, that funnier than Friends ever was, smarter than Seinfeld ever was. It just, like you say, just didn't have that reach, and he pushed the envelope. You know, he was making jokes about mental health. He was making jokes about homophobia, transphobia, terrorism. You know, this is like shortly after 9/11, and he's got jokes about terrorism. So he's pushing that envelope that a lot of people say, you know, they want pushed, and it got him canceled. Unfortunately, it got his show canceled. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. The cancel culture has always existed, and
a different name.
Yeah, it's just now it's like now wokeism is blamed for being the weaponizer of cancel culture, but it's always existed on the other side too, on the right wing side.
Who's done the most canceling? Honestly, conservatives. Who's always behind book bannings? Conservatives. Who canceled Titus? It's Fox Network. It's a conservative channel. You know, and I'm sorry, but like
Firefly.
It's Firefly. Yeah, see, look what they did. So
how dare they?
They talk about wokeism and cancel culture, but only one side's actually trying to get stuff banned and canceled. And it ain't the side that's saying, like, we don't like what you're saying, so we're not going to go see you. It's the side that's saying, we don't like what you're saying, so we're going to make sure nobody can see you.
Yeah.
Things are not, it's not always as equal and fair and balanced as people. Oh, it's on both sides. It's not on both sides.
Yeah, that's a very important difference that I'd like to take a deeper dive into someday. But it's good enough that if someone heard it just now, that maybe they start thinking about that one side is simply abstaining from support and maybe complaining also on social media. It makes sense. Everybody's going to complain.
Everybody has a right to complain.
But then there's the other side that's actually like campaigning and like, I feel like with a sort of vengeful energy, spending 10 years to pass laws in Congress just simply to oppress.
There's definitely a line in the sand.
We need to remove that penguin book with the two male penguins from elementary schools. God forbid two male penguins raise a baby. Yeah.
Parks and Rec with the gay penguin wedding. But there's definitely a line in the sand between cancel culture and silencing. Like, or, you know, like, I don't know what the word is, but essentially like running you out. Because there's definitely the level and the scope of power is what differentiates it. I think cancel culture, at least in the media that I've been in lately, cancel culture is more coming from the crowd. It's coming from the audience, and it's cries of outrage in a crowd. Like, no, like she's a witch. You know, she turned me into a new
burn the witch. And a quick example for me, like, so you don't feel like I'm always just like ragging on the right side, the conservative side. I would put somebody like, honestly, Bill Maher in the same group, where, you know, when I was younger, I liked his stand-up comedy. I thought it was pretty funny. But over the years, he just became really arrogant and just so like
He got richer, dude.
How
He got
dare he?
richer. Same thing. He got richer, and just the way he treats people who believe in religion. I'm not very religious, but I don't try to make people feel stupid for believing in religion to their face. Where this guy made a whole documentary about just trying to insult religious people to their faces, and I'm like, dude,
Why?
I don't want to see that either. Like, I want to know part of that. I don't. Bill Maher's another comedian that I just don't like because he's gone too far. He's another rich old white guy. And I put even Chappelle in that, even though he's not white. He's got white people money.
And you know who's also a rich white guy? Ellen DeGeneres.
Ellen DeGeneres. There's another one. Another heel turn.
Another heel turn.
So I did have something on heel turns at the end there that I didn't write down, so it just escaped me. But I wanted to talk about, or wanted to ask, once someone turns heel, and what happens to their support is, like, in wrestling, so people want to see that, or they enjoy that almost, but does their base of support change? Does it get better? What does their popularity look like? Something along those lines. And that's my curiosity.
It's very interesting because there's the world of professional wrestling during kayfabe, I'd say up till maybe the early to mid 80s before the WWF really expanded. So there's the professional wrestling world before that, and then the professional wrestling world since that. Prior to that, if you turned heel, it's because you were ready to make the point of professional wrestling has always been to make money.
Yeah.
And turning heel or babyface, it's a different way to make money. If you turn heel, that means the way you're going to make money now is by getting people so pissed off at you that they want to pay to see you get beaten up. That's what Roddy Piper famously said. He had the first WrestleMania matches. Hogan and Piper were like at the main event, and he's saying people didn't pay to see Hulk Hogan. People didn't pay to see Roddy Piper. People paid to see Hulk Hogan beat the shit out of Roddy Piper. And that's how you drew money. When you were a bad guy, Ric Flair was great at it, talking people, and they call it talking people into their seats. You cut a good promo, you talk yourself up, you create this personal problem with the babyface, and now people are going to want to put their hard-earned money to see you get beaten up. And sometimes, most of the time, the bad guy, just barely got away, just barely something, they cheated somehow at the last second, or maybe a buddy came in to help them, and the audience is like, oh my God, he's almost had next time he's going to get him. Next time, so they come back to town the next time. Oh, this is it. I'm gonna put some more money to go see him get beaten up, and maybe he got his comeuppance, and you're like happy, or he didn't, and you're like, oh, maybe you can get a third one out of it, And so that's kind of how you made money. If you turn babyface, now your way to make money is you're talking for the people. You're saying and doing what the audience wishes they could say and do. I'm going to kick that guy's butt. I heard what he said about your town. You know what? That's not cool. I visit here. I love it here. I'm going to beat him up for you guys. And now people are saying like, yeah, that's the guy who's going to beat up the bad guy. So that's how it was back then. You put the money, you're just drawing money, and it's whether you're a babyface or a heel, if you could get people to come pay, you're going to be at the top of the card. Nowadays it's just for story purposes. Maybe somebody gets bored and is like, I want to be heel for a while now. And the way wrestlers make money, it's so different. Now they're under contract, so they have guaranteed money. They're going to make a certain amount a year. Back then, there were no guarantees. You got paid on the house. How many people you got? Yeah, how many people
gave you some seasoning?
You get if you were a top guy, and you knew that people paid to come see you, you're going to get a bigger cut of that house. So you're going to work harder to get people to come see you. Nowadays, it doesn't really matter whether they come see you or not. You have your guarantee. And plus, heel or babyface, you've got merchandise with your name on it. So you're getting a lot of money. So I'm not saying that wrestlers are lazier. Someone like Jim Cornette would say they're lazier, but I'm definitely saying there's not as much emphasis into really making people believe that you are this evil scoundrel that they should pay to see you get beaten up. Nowadays, even the worst of the heels have their fans and making money. Even back in the 80s, during the highlight of the Four Horsemen, who were like four of the greatest heels in professional wrestling at the time, they had like a group of fans that always bought tickets like front row to the show, and they were right there. You could always spot the Four Horsemen fans because they were in suits, dark sunglasses, ties, and, expensive Rolexes. They're trying to roll like the Four Horsemen rolled. So there was always some fans, but the majority of the people you were paying to see the bad guys get beaten up. And nowadays it's like, oh, we just want to watch a show.
Yeah.
It's all about watching the show, and whoever's heel or babyface, it doesn't really matter. The brand is the selling point.
I have a question. After the heel turn and they are essentially now, quote unquote, the villain, what happened to the villains? Like, if they're defeated, what happens next? Are they able to turn heel again and pivot? Or is that like their downfall? Like, how does that work?
That's a great question. And that's something that Jim Cornette has mentioned. If you're a bad guy and you lose, you'll probably be fine, because then the next day you can just complain about how you were cheated, even if you weren't. Even if you lost fair and square, you could go out and complain like, he cheated. I had a cold. I wasn't quite ready. I slipped. The fans were distracting me with all their cheering and their booing, whatever. You can find a way to just keep your heat. And it works especially well if you had a manager, because if you had a manager, then maybe your manager could be the one to do all the smack talking. Or maybe if your manager got smacked around, people would forget that the main wrestler lost, but the manager got smacked around, so the wrestler doesn't lose any of their heat. Because the manager got beaten up. So if you were a bad guy, you could probably pivot and maybe just, start talking smack about another good guy, and you repeat the cycle. It's a lot harder for the baby faces, because if you're a good guy and you say you're going to win and you're going to do it for the people and you lose, they're going to lose faith in you.
You've lost us.
You've lost. And that's a lot more challenging, which is why it's a very fine line to find a way to maybe not always beat the bad guy, but try not to beat the good guy so cleanly. If the bad guy beats the good guy, there has to be an out for the good guy. The bad guy cheated. The audience saw it. Someone else interfered. If it had been a fair fight, the good guy would have won. That's how your good guy saves face. But if you just beat the good guy, it's very difficult. Like he's not any good, Yeah. Versus if you can beat a bad guy clean, and if they're good enough to talk their way out of it, they'll be fine with that. And they can keep going as a bad guy. Or, like Jess says, maybe pivot. They come out, you know what? I'm very sorry. I lost to the better man. You have my respect. You were truly the better person that day. And then another heel comes up and beats up the previous heel. That heel is now a good guy. You can pivot. You find a way. They have a bigger enemy. Like Avengers, Age of Ultron, Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch, they started off as heels in that movie. But then when Ultron came out as an even bigger heel, they were able to become the good guys by turning on him. So there's all kinds of ways you can play with the archetypes and the stories. And it's wrestling at its heart. It's good versus evil. It's just how you play around with it.
As far as heel turns for the real people we've mentioned, are there any heel turns that we know of that then heel turned back
to the
good graces? Yeah, to the good graces of the people. because I find that the heel turns I've seen kind of hit like a downfall, decline, and just kind of go into obscurity and then pop back up at some point. But they're no longer at that level of fame, I guess. I mean, maybe financially they're fine, but popularity wise.
Well,
I can kind of give you an example if I'm not mistaken. God, there was this senator. I'm looking up his name right now if I'm not mistaken. Senator Robert Byrd, who had been a member of the KKK, I believe.
Oh my
an
gosh.
organizer for the KKK. And in the 50s, and I think he was only there for about a year or two. So it's like, whoa, bad. But then he spent like the next 40 or 50 years of his life actually fighting for civil rights.
Oh, wow.
He's like, that was a mistake. I was wrong. That's not how we should be living as a country. I feel like that's somebody who was able to pivot from heel to babyface. So there is a way to kind of turn things around. One that I feel like, pop culture that I feel is kind of like maybe in between. I'm still not sure because I don't know all the facts. Is Jamie Spears, Britney Spears' father. Everyone's like, oh my God, this man's a terrible person. And look what he's been doing to his daughter. And she's under that conservatorship. And then they remove that conservatorship and Britney still like goes off the rails and does all kinds of crazy behavior. And some people are like, maybe Jamie wasn't the bad guy, Maybe
He was trying to keep her reined in.
Right. Maybe he was trying to keep, maybe he saw his daughter had some mental health problems. Maybe he was trying to keep her under control and try to help her, So there's ways to pivot, even I think even in real life, you could probably own up to your mistakes and say, you know what, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'm going to try and do better. Mm-hmm. I feel like you can give people second chances,
Well, the most famous one that comes to mind for me is Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
He had
Mark Wahlberg, no?
Mark Wahlberg. I don't know. For me, jury's out from what I've heard. It's the same like when Jackie Chan video comes up, Mark Wahlberg clip of a movie comes up, and it's always in the comments like, y'all just remember that. What was it that he ran over like three pedestrians or something?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And it was like people were saying that it was a hate crime because he was at least outwardly racist back then. So
now
like
he's
he
quiet.
ran over three Asian
He's
men.
quietly racist.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like you never really know. Like, was it just good marketing?
I mean, isn't that Vince Neil from Motley Crue? Like he killed some people also, or killed somebody because of a car wreck. Because I think he might have been drunk behind the wheel.
Oh, there it is. 1986, a then 15-year-old Wahlberg and three friends were charged for chasing three black children and pelting them with rocks while yelling, "Kill the," I'm not going to say that, until an ambulance driver intervened. The next day, Wahlberg harassed another group of mostly black children around the age of 9 or 10 at the beach, gathering other white men to join in racially abusing and throwing rocks at them. A seemingly unrelated second incident occurred 2 years later in 1988 when Wahlberg attacked two Vietnamese men while high on the drug PCP.
That's the one that I remember.
Oh, PCP.
And my understand, or is it this one? For the latter, Wahlberg was charged with attempted murder. This is the most.
And it's a fine. That's also like a fine line. Like, I mean, do you keep holding it against somebody what they did when they were 15 and stupid, and maybe have turned things around, hopefully at some point, and like I'm sorry, like that's also like, oh my God.
I think you do keep holding it against them until the victim has felt that justice has been served, or that the person has atoned for it. If the victim has forgiven them, then maybe public should be like, more forgiving to.
That's a tough one for me because
Yeah.
I still haven't forgiven Roman Polanski for drugging and raping a 14-year-old girl, even though that poor woman's been like, please, can we just move past it? And
No, no, we can't.
he ran away. He got away. He didn't atone. He ran from the courts. He fled to France,
That's what
so
I'm
he never
saying.
had to go to
There's
jail.
been no atonement.
Yeah, I
he
think
never.
it has to the atonement has to fit the crime.
Right.
I think
It's like,
that's
you know what? I will.
If you've been racist, I want to see you boots on the ground, like
Right.
fixing shit for the black communities. Like I don't need to.
Good point. And you know what? And with Polanski, like, you know what? Maybe for her sake, I can let go what he did to her. But he still fled from justice. He's still a fugitive
Right.
from the law. We could still get him for that at least.
Dude,
And
that's
also,
crazy.
if he did it to one child, like that's just the child that
He
came.
was the Bill Cosby of his time.
Roman, and to think he had Shannon. What's her name? She was murdered.
Oh my God. Shannon Tate.
Sorry. Shannon Tate.
Oh, yeah.
And she was beautiful. My God. But yeah. Who was the other one that I was thinking of? Another pivot that I was like, ooh. It wasn't Ellen DeGeneres. It was somebody else, but
I don't think she's pivoted, dude.
no, she's
She just
different-
went heel and then disappeared.
just healed away.
Yeah.
She just walked away. Yeah.
Which is the smart move. You know what? If you're rich,
just go.
take your money and run. Shut
Just
up.
go.
Go. Don't try.
I don't wanna
Stop
hear
trying to
it.
salvage whatever nonsense you got.
If you're racist, you're always going to be racist. And for him to want
Hey, you
to
know what? I feel like that guy, Senator Byrd, proves that's not necessarily true.
atonement,
if you
though.
learn and atone and try to do something about it. Yeah.
Atone correct, like to again to the
Well,
level of the crime.
Well, speaking of heel turns, might be time for us to turn heel
Here
and walk out this door with the
comes
show.
Alan to shut down the show.
Oh, it's time to go. Yeah, that's that I think rounds out the show for today. But I want to know, is there anything that we can learn from heel turns today that we can apply to? I don't know. I don't know.
if I
I'm having
may
trouble thinking of some closing thoughts in this.
I was going to say, if I may liken it to the world of professional wrestling, today's heel turn could be tomorrow's babyface turn. You never know.
Now that's a great lesson to keep in mind.
If you want to learn even more, you can find all the links in the show notes.
Remember, you can support us with a review on your favorite podcast app and find us on Facebook to let us know what you'd like to hear in future episodes.
You've just received the full scoop.
Yummy.
Well, that's been demoralizing.